There are twice as many bourbon barrels in the state of Kentucky as there are people. 10.5 million barrels. When you think of a distillery, you probably think of fancy copper tanks in a repurposed warehouse in a showroom-style facility. But there's another side to this operation, the industrial side, and even more of what you don't see. An absolutely modern, data-driven manufacturing process that's only improving how one of our favorite beverages gets made. Think of those little craft warehouse distilleries that are in hipster neighborhoods and things like that, but this is like the real deal industrial production.
We've got 3 or 4 city blocks of what they call Bourbon Row in downtown Louisville that has a bunch of those craft distilleries on it. And you go take that little excursion down through there, and even if you want to take, there's what they call the Bourbon Tour across the state of Kentucky. You can get a little passport book and visit all the different distilleries and get your passport stamped in that. But a lot of those are meant to be kind of showpieces, but real raw industrial about volume, you're not going to see on like the Bourbon Row. You will see a little bit of that out within the state, but what we visited today was all about volume, and that volume has to come from someplace, and you can't really do it with a whole bunch of people walking around, and the footprint just really doesn't match what we're trying to do with a craft distillery.
Yeah, I think the term was, this is for go, not for show. Is that what it was?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We started at grain receiving, which is where all the trucks come in, and so they're bringing in their primary ingredients, which is going to be corn, rye, and malt, along with some other small grains materials, which would be like a wheat or barley type material. So depending on what they're blending up, that one silo will kind of swing as to what's actually loaded into it. But those are the primary ingredients that basically end up going through the milling operation. They utilize the 3 mills there, and they kind of break that out into malt, small grains, and corn. And then that gets transported up into the mashing operation.
So this is kind of the heart and soul of the operation. So this is where we bring in the grain after we put in some hot water and some setback. That gets fed in by a couple different conveyors here. We'll go ahead and bring those up to temperature. Really the secret recipe that's guarded here is how much material, what temperature, for how long. Yep. It's all, process is all an equation of time and temperature to actually execute it. And so that's what's happening in these 3 different vessels that we see right here. So this really is that very first critical step of process control happens here.
And so from there it flows into a drop tub, and that's kind of that really large tub in the room that was really warm. And so they take that and they kind of do their first attempt at cooling through that massive heat exchanger that we see in there.
This is the biggest heat exchanger I've ever seen. This is unbelievable.
And from there, that's their first attempt to kind of knock down the temperature as it goes into fermentation. And the whole process of fermentation is about controlling the temperature over a period of time. They really want to manage what the sugars and the enzymes and how those interact. And so they're just trying to control that environment for whatever kind of temperature profile that looks like over time.
And that's one of the areas where automation has arguably been the most game-changer, created the most quality control. How would you describe the automation aspect, or where it's most important?
So from a management standpoint, they're looking for those same decisions to be made time after time after time in the same fashion. And that's what automation brings to the table for them right now. You're going to see a little bit more of that looking forward with some type of AI or some smart manufacturing eventually in the future that can step off of that layer of infrastructure once you've got it laid down. A lot of those people fear of, AI or smart manufacturing is going to take over my job. And really it's not. I mean, you can't get too much more lean than how these facilities operate now. But you're going to have that reliability of, hey, the automation's making the same decisions for you each time through when it sees this particular function.
Someone, would look at this and be like, oh, well, this might be an old-fashioned facility, right? Look at these big tanks. There's not the same glitz and glamour of the copper tanks that you'd see at more of a showroom distillery.
Right.
But the reality is there's a lot of smart manufacturing, a lot of intelligence, as you called it, that's behind all of these tanks and pipes now.
Yeah, it really has kind of evolved quite a bit of, hey, I've got a couple bushels of corn, granddad's recipe, and a rick of wood. Let's go make some bourbon. They really have evolved beyond that quite a bit. And the intelligence side of things is really That's that next level of excitement.
So the last step as we come out of the fermenter is we put that thing into the beer well, which is the same size as a fermenter, and that's really just a buffer tank. I was saying, hey, we're going to go on to the still next, so we'll empty out a fermenter, push it into the beer well, and the beer well is what actually we feed the beer to the still and let it extract the alcohol out of it.
So really, there's very little time actually spent here. Whatever it takes to pump it in and get it out. So this is where you're going to get a lot of your notes from your grain. You're going to be able to smell that.
Why do they call it beer?
Because it's fermented just like beer is.
So at this point, it's what beer is.
So beer would be this step.
Okay, all right.
So you can actually see the mash flowing up through there.
Cool. These are super important. These are the flow meters going to the stills, the 3 different pipes.
So it's a bunch of pans that have slots in them. And so as that's coming down, they're trying to thin that liquid out. As the steam's coming up, the steam will capture the evaporated alcohol, and they'll push it back down into what they call thumpers, which is down here.
And so that thumper is that last layer of extracting any kind of impurities. So it comes up through a liquid bath, and what's still vaporized on the top is good alcohol that goes through the condenser and then out to that glorious spirit vault that we see.
It's like an altar. That's the way I thought about it when I saw it.
Spirit vaults are really kind of the novel part of every organization. It really is kind of their showpiece that everybody wants to see. This is where the nectar of the gods come from.
Okay. This is what everybody's here to see and talks about. Let's walk up and take a look at that.
All right. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, this is the end product. This is what it's all about.
That's so cool. I always forget that it's not actually brown when it comes out of this process. Yeah. That's my default color for bourbon.
So if you look at what comes off the stills, you're going to see that's very clear, wake up. I don't want to use the word moonshine, but it's very much what it looks like. Elijah Craig, which is one of the brands here, is based off of a real person who was a Baptist minister, and he was credited with being the first person to put this into a charred barrel, and that's what really gives a lot of the flavor profiles and the color to actual bourbon.
Spirit vaults are really kind of the novel part of every organization. It really is kind of their showpiece that everybody wants to see. This is where the nectar of the gods come from.
Yeah, as someone that's only done like distillery tours inside of more of the smaller craft distilleries that are meant for show, I thought it was a very neat juxtaposition having this kind of like an offering place for the spirits there after it had gone through the process. So very cool seeing that inside of what is a massive industrial facility, and I think providing a real, a more real look into what bourbon manufacturing looks like.